Welcome to this week's episode of the Child Anxiety FAQ. FAQ stands for Frequently Asked Questions, and I'm answering your questions about child and teen anxiety. My name is Dawn Friedman, and I have been working with kids and families for more than 30 years in a variety of roles, most recently as a clinical counselor, and now as the owner and operator of Child Anxiety Support, where I coach parents of anxious kids. And this week's question is, do you have any tips for an overwhelmed parent dealing with their child's anxiety? Yeah, I do. And this is specifically about shifting the way you are thinking about dealing with your child's anxiety to give you the stamina to keep going because it's a long haul. We know that anxious brains are going to be anxious, and that an anxious child will be an anxious teen, will be an anxious adult, but being anxious does not necessarily mean that that person will be undone by their anxiety. I use myself as an example all of the time because I was an anxious child, I was an anxious and depressed teen, and as an adult, I have learned how to manage my anxiety so that I am able to do things in spite of it. So I have a lot of social anxiety. I am also very introverted, and yet I have a social life. I have friends. I do a lot of public speaking, and this is in spite of having social anxiety. This is because I have learned to manage my anxiety, not because I just one day woke up and stopped being anxious. So I want you to think about that, what that means for your child. Your job is not to eliminate your child's anxiety. Your job is not to turn an anxious child into a not anxious child. Your job is to support your child in being exactly who they are and helping them to be the best version of it. So just like any other aspect of your child's personality, maybe you have a child who isn't a terrific athlete or is a terrific athlete. Maybe you have a child who has natural musical talent or a child who is no good at music. Maybe you have a child who tends to be grouchy or you have a child who is really cheerful. You cannot change who they are, but you can work with it and help them become the best version of themselves. If your child isn't great at athletics, you don't have to turn them into a superstar Olympic athlete, but you can teach them that they can use their body in whatever capacity is fun and feels good to them. If you have a child who is lousy at music, you can get them violin lessons without a goal of creating a concert level performer, and instead a child who learns how to stick with something for the pleasure of doing it, who learns some measure of self-discipline in learning how to practice, or who learns how to try a thing and know when they no longer want to do it. In other words, you do not have to fix your child. So if you don't have to fix your child and you just need to learn how to work with your child, then hopefully that will eliminate some of the overwhelm. You do not have to fix this. If you don't have to fix that, how do you learn how to deal with your child's anxiety? Part of that is learning how you're going to react to it. That's physically how you're going to take care of yourself when your child is winding up. And that's a lot about boundaries. A lot of the work that I do with parents is teaching them boundaries and knowing what is my job and what isn't my job. When we are overwhelmed, it's hard to make decisions. Our brain is full of that overwhelm. Just like when our kid is melting down, we can melt down too. We can feel so overwhelmed by their anxiety or about the idea of trying to figure out their anxiety that we just shut down and we don't feel like we have any answers. And so we need to step away from it. The thing that you do need to know is there is a lot of information out there for you, and there is a lot of support. Culturally, we are understanding more and more that parents are key to helping their child with their anxiety. I don't want you to feel this as a burden. like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to try to learn something totally new, and instead say, okay, this is an opportunity. I have some control over what's going to happen in my family. I have some control over how our family learns to handle this particular challenge with this particular child. So you can access that information by working with me, by getting books on anxiety, by working with other professionals who are trained in child anxiety. Whatever feels most accessible to you, whatever is easiest for you, whatever fits most into your life, you get to decide that. There is lots of information out there. Just listening to this podcast is a terrific first step in learning how to do this. So you have time. It may feel very urgent. That's anxiety. It may feel urgent, which fuels your overwhelm, but you have time. Remember, you have a lifetime of working on anxiety. You have however long your child is in your home. And after that, too, of course, because you're going to have a relationship, to be figuring this out. So give yourself a minute to just honor that it feels urgent, but you have time, that it feels like you're supposed to fix it, but you don't have to fix it, that it feels like you have to access that information, but that information is waiting there for you. One of the things that I notice when I'm working with parents is they come at me and say, this is the issue that's happening with our family and I need it fixed. It doesn't work like that. So if you have a child who won't sleep alone or struggles to get on the bus to school or melts down at friend's house, I know it feels like you need to fix it, but you don't have to fix it. First, you have to step back. You have to understand it. And that takes time. And then when you understand it, you have to start shifting the way your family responds. And that takes time. And as you shift it, your child shifts, and then you respond with more shifting. This is not a one and done deal. This is a paradigm shift for your family. It changes the way you respond and react. You need to continue to learn as you go. You will go down dead ends and dark alleys and realize that's the wrong direction and you will need to start over. And that is part of it. And that's fine because real change is much more complicated and much more intense than you just need to paint the walls a different color and everything is going to look brand new. So I want you to be realistic as you consider how to deal with your child's anxiety, to know that it will be uncomfortable and that's part of it. To the yucky feeling you're feeling now, that's part of what is going to motivate you to change. It is a tool. So those are my tips for when you're feeling overwhelmed. It's to know you do not have to fix this. There is time for you to figure it out. And this is a long haul, not something you need to change overnight. And finally, that there are a lot of resources out there for you. If you are interested in seeing how I can work with you, you can go to childanxietysupport.com and see what I'm offering. But like I said, I'm certainly not the only gig in town, and there is information and there are professionals that are out there who can help you. I'll see you next week. And if you have a question, feel free to submit it. I'd love to answer it on the show.